Hello, my loves. I am so excited to be back with you guys all today to have a very special guest to chat. Honestly, just her whole story, what she's built out of her entire life. It's so extraordinary getting to know her in person and just want to pick her brain even more because I feel like sitting down, I've heard like bits and bobs of your story, but you've just done such incredible work and you surround yourself with so many incredible people. So I'm really excited to dive into that. For those of you that are new, what's up? We talk all things marketing, branding, and we want to talk all things dating and love. It goes kind of the whole spectrum on this podcast, the soft and the savage, hence the name. And so I'm excited that you're here. And without further ado, we have Ryann Halo. If you want to give a quick introduction of who you are and your magic in the world.
Hello. Yeah, so happy to be with you anywhere, Laura. We've become fast friends. I mean, we're different people every day. So where to go with that intro in this moment? Uh, well, I can tell you that at this time, I have several businesses that we've scaled that are operating under the leadership of COO and CEOs. I love to travel, go make deeper connections with people like yourself that are in this stage of evolution and a season of growth, but also grounding.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just happy to share whatever, I'm an open book. So I feel like I'm going to let you kind of guide this conversation for a change.
Yay!
Good for me.
Open book. I love it. So the thing that I love, I met Ryann at one of Eddie's events, and she was, well, I actually saw you speak at where I saw Jess speak, which I think is where you guys met. And then I got to know you a little bit more because you were at this event and I got to interview you a bit. And something that you shared in the whole introduction is just like you have a 10th grade education, but you have built 7-figure businesses. And like that leap in my head, because we think we have to, do the corporate ladder, or we have to jump these certain things, and we have to do these certain certifications, and we have to go this whole route. And I think just your whole story of from there to now, I want to dive a little bit deeper on, people that listen to my podcast, they've usually been through a shitstorm of life, like some type of trauma, some type of thing. And on the back end of that, they built something very successful, and then they struggle with love. And so it's kind of the journey that they go on, because trauma then sets us on this path of like being a high achiever, and you happen to find, a really soft, gentle love on top of going on this whole journey. So starting from a 10th grade education to where you are now, what is your story? Where'd you come from?
Yeah, let's get into it. I mean, before I go into the history, I will say I low key love talking about my relationship and relationship history. So I think that's such a cool component that you're bringing to this. So happy to get to that point as well in the conversation.
Yeah.
But taking it way back before that point, I um, usually I share that, I was born in New York. I grew up in a small town called Spring Hill, Florida. We moved there when I was like 5. Um, when I say small town, it was like very suburban. We had Applebee's, we had Walmart, and I always had this sense of FOMO from leaving New York that I was like, I was meant for bigger things. I was meant for the city life. I loved to sing and I loved art, but I also I was told at a very young age that I was gifted academically. And what that did to my mindset around success was coming from a lower income family in a small town. It was basically ingrained in me that your path to success is college. That's it. That's it. Uh, so I had that identity of my path to success was I needed to do really well in school, continue with my gift and my honors courses, and then become like a lawyer or something. I don't even know anything about business at that time, but whatever I pictured a CEO as, somebody important in a company,
Yeah.
wearing like blazers, which I do wear blazers now. So yeah, I had this like very small perspective of what my path to success had to be and what it would look like. So I did have a very loving family in my younger years. My mom was the responsible one. My dad was like the fun one. And they got divorced. It was fine, not a big deal. Like me and my little brother enjoyed splitting time at the two houses. until my mom got her first like serious relationship. And this is when I was in 6th grade. I was really hitting like the height of my social self. I was starting to come into that. And yeah, everything changed. And when I hit middle school, my dad had apparently been suffering from depression, and my mom moving on was enough to just kind of put him over the edge. And he took the life of my 6-year-old brother and his own.
Wow.
So that was the big turning point for me. Mom, a couple more years went by, and she did develop some prescription drug addiction, and went from being like a very successful nurse, very like loving, responsible, to basically a different person. And I was an only child at that point. So a couple years of things just evolving. I got further behind in school. I like you name it, like we could go into the details, but it was just a mess. So I ended up leaving home at 15 and staying. I mean, I stayed all kinds of places, from like friends' parents who were nice enough to recognize and let me stay there, to like eventually literally sleeping on the couches at drug dealers' houses. So this brought me to a place of, if we think about my picture of success and how I defined what making something out of my life would look, I did not see a path to that at all. So that is where I first got to understand where feelings of hopelessness and depression can stem from. And it really is, I think, a lack of ability to see hope for the future. So just, I've always been like very naturally bubbly, optimistic, happy kind of person. And it was the darkest time that I think I've ever had, even to this date. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And it was the height of the opiate epidemic. There's just so much darkness and sadness and dead ends every which way. So I'd always been very like anti-drug, and like, oh, so why would anybody do that? And I started to feel myself slipping away, be like, well, why not try that, this
Mm-hmm.
or that? And it was right in that instance that like a light shined through the clouds. And it was like divine intervention. And I got this woman came into my path and offered me $25 a day to be her personal assistant at a hair salon. So, um, a lot of people I think would be like, oh, $25 a day. You kidding me? Like that didn't really enter my mind for one. I really jumped at the opportunity to just have some path to purpose for my days, as well as I'm a hustler, man. Like I've been selling candy since middle school, to like I've always sold things, and I was like, okay, well, this is some path to that. But the other thing was like I looked at doing hair as, I don't I didn't think it was going to equal success. And
Mm-hmm.
my perspective was so limited about what you could achieve in the hair industry. So I felt a little bit of this like dissonance of like, oh, am I settling? Am I not going to be like my true success? But thankfully I didn't listen to those voices. And I mean, for the sake of time, I'll just shoot past everything else. $25 turned into $50, turned into $100, just working as an assistant from applying myself. Went to hair school at 16, and moved to Chicago. Got my city life for a couple years in. And my new definition of success was, I want to be a freelance hair and makeup artist. I want to work in that glitz and glamour life. Was pursuing that, and then God dropped another bomb on me. He's like, you want to own a salon, you got to move back to your hometown. It's a whole thing that brought me to that. So I say all that to say, now I have one of the top 200 salons in North America. We have multiple locations, we have an amazing team culture, and like I'm so fulfilled by my ability to impact my team's life and my community through all that I have been willing to like pivot and not be so attached to my own picture of success. I'm like so much more successful and happy now for having gone along that unconventional road. And I feel like now I'm really in my purpose. So sorry.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That like it's a hard path, right? All of the things that you've had to walk through, but also accepting and pivoting that in order to make something work for you versus letting that work against you, because statistically you could have and should have gone the other way, right, got also into drugs, gone the other way, versus there was divine intervention. And I feel like there is a choice point in so many people's lives that they don't take, where it's like the thing that's easy is the thing that's common. The thing that's common is the thing our parents did. And so you can go that route, right? Like you were able to have the divine intervention to then pivot to then do something. Whereas like for me, it was my mother was cocaine, over the counter prescription drug or prescription drugs, addict, alcohol, things like that. I did the same thing. I ended up selling cocaine, getting into all of that mess, getting addicted to drugs and alcohol and things of that nature. But then there is a choice point in that moment as well where you have to move through it. And, you know, all of those things that happen to us, they really do propel us into that purpose. And they really do propel you into the pathway that's ultimately meant to you. There's always, what I have found, you're always going to get to where you were meant to go. There's just going to be a lot of different choice points along the way in order to make that happen. And what I'm hearing is in your story is there's something hugely traumatic. Like very slim human beings on this planet could ever relate to what you went through, and to be able to keep your heart open to build something so extraordinary, like your work culture, like what happens at Salon Halo. I was texting you this, and I don't think I articulated it appropriately or like fully, of just like, it really does embody your open heart. And like the world gave you so many reasons to close it. It can harden you. It can do these things. But, you know, your salon is a representation of your open heart. The people you surround yourself with here, representation of your open heart. You know, you and your marriage, like that is a huge representation of your open heart. And I think it's just a testament to the woman that you chose to step into in order to make that happen. And I'm so curious, like during those choice points, what was it that made you choose? It's harder to choose what you chose versus the circumstances that you were handed.
Yeah, man. I know. So, well, I think I learned at a young age that if I want something, I'm not going to rely on anybody but myself to get it. And that's before everything happened. I don't know. I mean, my mom, like I said, was very independent and a great example. The first 10 years of my life, I think, gave me the foundation to be able to handle everything else. And I don't know if I've had past lives or what, there's definitely always been this strong will inside of me that's pre-trauma. So I don't want to blame it all on the trauma. But my determination that I'm not going to put my life experiences in the hands of anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan of the victim mindset, and I want to take radical accountability, because that means I'm empowered. That means that if I take responsibility for all the bad things that are happening to me, I can then take responsibility for all the good things, and then I can make changes. So I think I learned very young that, like, all right, we didn't have a lot of money. There was things that I wanted that I was like, okay, well, I need to figure out how to make this happen. So it was a great late lesson for life. And then I think if, I didn't feel good in those darker times, it was more of like an innate knowing of like, this does not align and feel good. So seek the light, like a little moth, just look to bigger and better. I will say, when I got into hair school specifically, I think it opened up a lot more empathy in me that wasn't as in tune with. I was pretty like analytical minded, and touching people and being of service to people. And Paul Mitchell, the school I went to, was very big on philanthropy. It, like, totally unlocked this other side of me to be super in touch with my heart, as you kind of referenced, and be more in tune to that part of me, not just the head part of me. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah. I mean, it's choosing those choice points, right? Where it's like, you, again, I think also customer service does teach that when you're in these spaces of how to care for other people, how to actually be open, how to have conversations, how to do things, and also remove yourself from the victim mindset. A lot of us can sit in, and I'm sure you see it too, where it's like, oh, this happened to me, so it excuses my shit behavior. It excuses my lack of motivation. It excuses my closed heart. It excuses all these kind of things. Now I hate men. Now I hate this. Now it's like, well, this happened to me, so therefore I get to have an excuse for the fact that
yeah,
I'm not holding myself to a higher standard, versus what I see more and more in the tables I sit at and the higher caliber women that I want to be around is everyone has a damn story. Every single person. And what they did in a choice point is they let it open them versus close their heart. And in that, they found service. And that's what I see in your mission. It's like you just chose service and you keep choosing service. Like that is you. You are just all service. Like, how can I help you? What is it like when I met you? You're like, what are you working on? How can I support you? I was like, whoa, this is amazing. Like, this is incredible. And it really is that. And it's just an incredible gift because you don't meet a lot of people like that. You really don't. There's always, I'm doing this in order to get something back, or there's just like, that's how you're going to scale your way to the top. And what I'm seeing is the way you scaled your way to the top is just having an open heart and being of service.
Yeah, well, thank you. I appreciate that acknowledgement a lot. I have found that, I mean, I think a core motivator for me is that and this does tie back to the beginning of the story, is that I don't want to waste any of the gifts I've been given or any of my potential. So that is like, I don't know, Enneagrams and all the personality assessments, like a core motivator is like making the most of my potential. I don't want to like come to the end of my life and be like, man, I should have took more chances or applied myself more. Like that really fuels me above all else. And I think that applies to the hardships we experience. And I do think that, and believe we can all paint the picture in the slant we want to have on it, but I believe that we go through the things we go through to equip us and empower us to make the difference in the world we're here to make. So if I could choose to look at everything and be like, well, that happened to me, that's so messed up, I didn't deserve this, why me? And then what is the reflection of my life and my impact on the world?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's true or not, whether there is a God or there isn't a God, or like, it's still going to be a better life for me and those around me if that is the approach I take. So I think for those where I truly do believe it's like my divine purpose for being here, all these things, even if you don't believe that, my friends listening, like, just think about the options.
Yeah.
It's still your life to experience. So yeah.
It's making the best of it. And so what was your journey recovering from that? Like there's a lot, right? And then being in work. And so the reason I'm asking this is because, like I said in the beginning of the podcast, majority of the women that I work with, like 99.9%, have been through something. And so instead of dealing with that something, myself included, they threw themselves into work. And then usually what happens is when we start to fall in love or start to date is when you start to see, oh shit, I am not healed as much as I thought I was. Like that is how my story was, where it was just like, I'm fine, like ran the successful company. And then I started dating. And I remember, and I got incredibly sick and had all these chronic health issues. And my naturopath was, do you want to talk about how your trauma is affecting this? And at the time I was like, what trauma? As I'm getting my ass beat by my partner at the time and like addicted to cocaine. And she's like, you mean what trauma? And so having to go on that whole journey, I was like, I'm blocking myself from life, from denying the fact that these things happen to me. And I see this a lot with people where they just deny the past, but really that's blocking you from actually achieving the thing. So what was your whole journey of navigating all of that?
Okay, isn't it funny how so many of us just have the same friggin' framework of a story and just insert little details here and there?
Yep.
Itself is like such a clear indicator to me that there's more to this than meets the eye. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's funny at this point. It's comical.
Yeah.
Anyway, so for me, that progression looked like in this. So like pre-salon, post-salon could be like a good point in the timeline. So in the still living in my hometown, but starting to like, have you ever that algorithm of the cave that the what it's like people that they've only been in this cave their whole life and they don't believe that there's something outside of it and
Yeah.
the whole thing. Yeah. We can
Yeah.
look at that. No, the allegory of the cave. Um and the I think that's what it is like if you only can see out of a limited like peripheral vision, you don't know what exists beyond that. So growing up in a small town, growing up with the family and whatever contributing factors I had, teachers, community, I only knew what I knew. And I knew how to communicate the way I knew how to communicate. I knew about my limitations to the extent that, you know what I'm saying? Like, so
Yeah.
what was possible to me at that point? And then I get thrust into this adulthood kind of young and early and taking care of myself, but really kind of enjoyed it too. I loved the independence. And here I am thinking, okay, I got things figured out. I am who I am. This is how the world is. Then we have post salon era. Think, 21-year-old with a salon company plopped in her lap. No formal training, maybe not the best examples up until that point, very limited resources. And that was the relationship that I got into that pushed me to see where my limiting factors were, where my gaps, weaknesses were. And I was so determined that, listen, I had to move back from Chicago at turning 21 to small town Spring Hill in 2011 to start from nothing. I was not going to do it for nothing. I was going to make sure it worked. So I was so invested and determined that I was going to make it work that I was willing to do anything.
Mm.
I was willing to get radically accountable. I was willing to read all kinds of books, go to all kinds of seminars, spend money I didn't really have, and figure out how to get better, because I kept hitting these walls of resistance. Like, you'd grow a couple team members. Oh my gosh, we're getting there. We're getting there. And then you'd lose one, or you'd lose two, or, there would just be these, or all these resistance walls that I had to humble myself and be willing to say, okay, what can I do to make a change? Because I can't blame anybody else. All I can do is change me and look at me. And I learned I did not have healthy communication styles, or I had to learn, I'm an Enneagram 8, for instance. I had to learn what a healthy Enneagram 8 is versus an unhealthy Enneagram 8, and then be able to catch myself and do the things to mitigate why I seem like a tyrant sometimes. And it's really just because I'm passionate, or, you name it, personal development wise. Like, I had to be humble and willing and want to get results more than I wanted to be right.
Mm.
And that is how I was able to grow as a person. And yeah.
It's something I say often, where it's like, would you rather be right or would you rather be in love? And that ultimately has to come from releasing this aspect that self-righteousness does get you far. I think after certain events, like, you need it. You need that tenacity. You need that drive. You're like, I am right about all things. Like, and like, it gets you to a certain thing. But that's where that, like, it's lonely at the top, quote unquote, thing happens. It's like, it's really actually not. It's your self-righteousness that's making you lonely, and you will hit a cap because you cannot grow past it, that certain thing, where it's like, it gets you out of the gate, but then you have to humble yourself and learn all the lessons, because entrepreneurship, relationship, they're the ayahuasca journey of the soul. Like, you cannot hide from your shadows in these spaces. You will be confronted with all of them, and you have to actually look at them in order to expand past even what you find to be imaginable. You have to be able to look at yourself and take ownership over all that.
Absolutely. And like, it could be referenced as the ego, and the ego is survival. And that's where you find people who have had to overcome and survive so much get stuck in that place of the ego, and not the ego as in like, oh, look at me, I'm biggest, baddest, best thing, but it's this sense of self that we're looking to preserve and hold on to, as you said, righteousness. And when we're able to come out of that survival mode and rest in more of a faith and a confidence that's true, deep knowing of our worth and our abilities, we can let go of the ego and surpass it. So it's like, yeah, the ego got me through a lot. I mean, a lot of things I needed at a time that no longer serve me. Right. So, I mean, alcohol, like, there's so many things that I'm like, yeah, that probably saved me in that time. But now, is it serving me? I need to be honest and continue to evolve and shed those layers. And funny, so that's what got me a level of personal development and success in business. Flash to my husband. I could really tie that in so perfectly that, so fun story there. Background is, my husband, Jerry, was one of my first clients. Like, when the sign went up saying we, at that time, were a Paul Mitchell salon, just this little unit, 1,000 square foot. And his family, he's a partner with his parents in a pizzeria. And that's like 25 years. They were across the street.
Hmm.
So he's across the street working. He sees the Paul Mitchell sign goes up. He had actually just gotten out of a relationship with a hairdresser he put through hair school through Paul Mitchell. So he's like, oh, I need a new hairstylist, and I do like Paul Mitchell. So I still remember his first haircut because it was long, and I had to take it short, and it took me like an hour. But I had nobody else in there, so it just quietly cut his hair all off. So yeah, he was a loyal client for 7 years, and I've had many different types of relationships for the seasons of my life, and he just was pretty much in a long-term relationship basically for the rest of that time that I knew him for about 7 years. And I honestly can say that I was never looking at him romantically, and I never felt like he was checking me out or anything. And like we know when somebody is like, it was never like that. And he was like a fun, client to have. But I had lots of great relationships with clients, and then I actually passed him along because I was starting to travel as a trainer nationally more often. Sorry.
She's a little sicky. She's getting over a sicky.
It's a little brain fog too. So, um, so I got him actually reallocated to another team member. So I wasn't cutting his hair bi-weekly like I had been for 7 years. And I was elevating a lot in my life. And I had currently was at a time actually of not being committed. And I had done an exercise for myself because I'm very big on clarity, intention, vision setting. That's a huge part of my coaching method. Like the first phase is heavy on setting vision, intention, all that. So I did that for who I wanted to be with next because I was like, I'm really starting to reach some higher points in my life. I need to get intentional. I'm 27. I don't want to accidentally end up with somebody that is not going to support my long-term goals. So I made a nice like 3-4 page list and it was all over the place. It was so random, not a typical archetype of a person for sure. And within a month or two, probably, he added me on Facebook. Jerry had never had Facebook. So I was like, oh no. I'm like, oh gosh, it's gonna get awkward. He must have broken up with him and his girlfriend must have broken up and he must be single. That's why he has Facebook, blah, blah, blah. So fast forward to a little banter and I was like, all right, well, I think we saw each other out at a local brewery and basically within 3 months, 3 or 4 months, we were engaged. So, didn't expect any of that. And also, one big thing for me is that if we had tried to date like earlier in those years, we would not have been a good fit. Like, we would not have stayed together. We definitely wouldn't have gotten married. He wouldn't have liked me at that stage, knowing him now. And I might not have liked him where he was at in his growth phase, but we were both one of the things we always bonded over was like books we were reading, the like health things we were doing, and being business owners. So we had like growth mindset. That was huge. And once I got to know him, the craziest thing was that reading back that list, he was everything on there. And I wrote this list and I knew him at that time.
Yeah.
He was writing that list thinking, oh, this is so Jerry. No, he didn't exist to me in my mind at that time. Wrote it on paper, then he existed. It's just, it's pretty wild. The only thing is he's 6'2" and I put 6'4".
Return him. It's fine. Next. Just kidding. Oh, I love that. And it really is. It's just sweet seeing you guys together. And it's so extensive for me because, I'm in my earliest stage dating journey, trying to figure out how to balance relationship and scaling companies and this whole side, and to see both of you have your companies and you're scaling in different arenas and you're growing these things and all that kind of stuff. How do you guys find your relationship? I mean, it's been a while now to sustain that, right? Like you've had big growth, he's had big growth. How have you been able to balance that?
I'm going to try to be as like honest and not rose-colored glasses as I can think back. So this was now like about 7-8 years ago. Communication is a strong point for me, I would say, especially because I've had to work so much in that area to build team. Yeah. So I'm very all on the table for one. The biggest core thing that I've seen that is a commonality with people that also I think are able to reach this point is constantly discussing and having shared goals. So sharing and really thinking of yourself as a partnership and a team and being willing to, I think we kind of like, what's the word? Like we kind of hand the ball off back and
Hmm.
forth. So it's like sometimes, I need more of this and he needs more of that. And then we kind of take turns. I think professionally, we've gone through our back and forth of who has more weight on them. So he knew and was okay with the fact that I had very strong specifics around I like my freedom. I'm very he calls me an outside cat. I don't know if anybody
Yeah.
how you will, but he's like, I'm trying to like, I just have to love you for who you are and be cool with that. And I believe that you don't get with somebody to change them. You don't
Yeah.
you pick them because you love who they are and maybe you want to help support them in their goals to be even better. But I think both being okay with who we are and what we're agreeing and signing up for was huge. Discussing where we wanted to take our lives and how we want to live our lives, huge. So like travel, we don't necessarily want kids. We both want to put business as a top priority, at least for the next 10, maybe 20 years. I have huge goals for what I believe I'm here to do. And he can either love me and support me for that, or maybe I'm not right for him. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, that was a big part of it. But communicating as things change, and wanting the same things and the same lifestyle. I think that's most of it.
Yeah. Did you guys in the beginning, is that just like the natural cadence you guys had to be able to communicate that easily? Or is it just like, this is because 3 months is quick? Like, that's just like, all right, we're in it, let's go. Like, so you guys had to have open conversations at that time.
So Jerry did very well with my communication style, and I am so on the disc test. I'm like all D, then I, then S and C. So I'm like super duper direct.
Mm-hmm.
Like I literally told him, if you want to ask me out, ask me out. I don't want to go to a movie. I don't go to movies. I don't like movies. I want it somewhere we can talk. I want something outside. Like I just and he was like, whoa. And I guess he liked it. I mean, a lot of people that would not be their vibe. And that's okay because then we would have wasted our time. So I
Yeah.
was like, I'm so that's probably a piece of advice for all my friends is to just become the best version of yourself that you want to be and you will naturally attract the right people. Don't try to make things fit or work because you're just you're like selling yourself out, like don't settle, but also know where you should be compromising because it is still a partnership. So
Yeah.
yeah, I just put myself out there. I was like, this is it, take it or leave it. I got time to like, I don't care. I got other things going on. And he was cool with it. So yeah, I don't know. It just all took off so quickly. It's so funny. He would, if he was here, he would say, I'm like, oh, I'm an alien. Like I'm not normal. So I don't know if it's relatable to just like put yourself out there like that, but that's what I did.
Yeah. What do you think is the thing that helped you scale so quickly with business and love? What is like the main first thing for anyone that's looking to do that in the coming year?
Dramatic, radical personal accountability is the biggest thing. So auditing yourself and the results of your life, being willing to see when things aren't working and being like, all right, I'm trying this thing over and over again and it keeps not turning out the way I want. Okay, maybe I need to make a change. Or being willing to acknowledge that you're the only common denominator in your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So strings of relationship challenges, strings of friendship challenges, business challenges, like you're the common denominator. And that's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, but it's also freeing once you do. But I don't think I scaled the business as fast, honestly. I think it was slow and low, but strong and really strong foundation because we're 13 and a half years in now. This is not,
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot of businesses don't last that long in general, or they go up and then they come back down. So for me, it was just constantly being willing to evolve and be innovative and look at where we needed to strengthen our gaps and always be thinking about like what the future could be.
Yeah. And something you also said is the foundation in both business and relationship. It's like your foundation in relationship is you. You have a strong foundation. Like you said, you were already working on your communication styles. You were already looking at this stuff to be able to hold a relationship, and you knew yourself to be able to, like, this is my standard. This is what I want. This is what I'm ready for. Here we go. Let's go. And the same thing in business is just you're so focused on the foundation, even like the people in who that come into your salon to like the people that are like all of it. It's like making sure the foundation is there, and then as you're scaling, that can hold all the other parts. And I see you do that very intentionally.
Yes, that's great. It's the yin and the yang. You
Yeah.
need a strong foundation if you want to think about my 100 other cool big ideas. And that's where when I coach people, I see them falling into one category or the other. They have a million great ideas, but they can't get their foundation and their systems started and or schedule out their time to hold the cadence that's necessary to achieve any one of those things. Or you have the people that are very regimented, structured, and maybe aren't pushing to the bigger and better, and they're getting stagnant. So like my coaching methodology, grow and glow method, shout out, the grow and glow method. I've spent over a year and a half now, like working with super intentional people to distill down all of the things that I've learned and understood and created over 13 years to have something that applies to any service business with a team. It's not salon specific. I've done it with the restaurants, multiple retail, med spa. It's foundation. You know, you need the vision stage, you need the creation, then you need expansion. So all that kind of falls into there.
Yeah. I'm like, I wish I want to like crack open the egg on the grow and glow method, but I'm probably just going to have you back on to discuss that stuff because it is extraordinary. And I think it's a huge part as well. And this will be part two, where it's like, it's a huge part that frees up your time to be able to do all the other stuff. And I think that's the thing that caps a lot of successful, specifically women, of like actually hitting their heights because they don't understand how to do that. So I'm excited. Yay! Is there any final things, anything I didn't touch on in based on what we riffed on here that you want to close out with?
I guess I'll just finalize some of the perspective on the
Yeah.
coaching and consulting. So, as per my leadership beliefs and, you know, how to create a sustainable scaling company, I have built out this wing of the Halo organization that is now consulting and education. And I'm always looking to provide next steps for my team. And then that's part of this like sustainable growth, and it works both ways. So we're helping more people outside of our organization as well as helping the people inside of our organization, because you know there's a lot of them that are like, I love working here, but I don't want to do hair forever. So we help them go into the position now of consulting for other businesses. So we primarily, like I said, work with med spa, regenerative wellness, any kind of like service industry with a team. But yeah, check it out.
Yeah. And where can people get in touch with you?
So Ryann is how we spell Ryan. Ryan with two N's. So Ryann_Halo is my handle for most things. I'm most active on Instagram, but I need to get more on like TikTok and stuff, but I'm resistant. But yeah, Ryan on Instagram, and then in my bio, you'll see my salon and my Instagram for the consulting. So give us a follow.
Yay! Yeah. Well, I loved this conversation. Truly, again, I never know where these like things are gonna go. It's just like kind of where the conversation flows, and I've loved getting to know you a little bit more. And I know these are more of the conversations, like yes, strategy and things like that. I think that's super helpful, but something that I have found to be one of the most impactful things in my own life and for people that I'm around is really understanding how high level CEOs think, like what the actual beginning stages were, what they went through, how they overcame it. And like all I hear is like resiliency and like intentionality and like an open heart and like doing the work in order to achieve those things. And I think it's just beautiful what you're doing. And I'm excited to see this like next phase you're in to share your magic even further and what you've been through. So I'm really, really excited. Thanks for being here. Yay! And so for any of you that loved this episode, we'll have your handle and everything in the show notes, but make sure you subscribe, share, like, review, whatever platform you're listening, because we are working to scale this entire thing and get it to the top 1%. And I'm very excited about that. So we see you every single Monday, but we'll see you in the next week. And yeah, see you there. Bye.